I was actually in a helicopter when Hassan Reddick requested a trade from the Eagles last summer.
Trying to enjoy the helicopter
tour?
Yeah,
it's like a 30-minute helicopter ride. I know the service is not particularly good.
As noisy as possible.
It's super, super loud, dude. Less than a minute later, I got a call. And I'm like, okay, this is good news because I'm going to be first on this. But it's bad news because this call is going to drop any second. I can barely hear this person. It's so bad. And so my entire life flashes before my eyes.
Welcome to Scrap The Playbook, where we talk ball the way fans want to talk ball. I'm here with Fox Sports' NFL insider, the co-host of Why is Draymond Green Talking About Football, and a former Occidental basketball star, role player.
I'd say Seattle U as well, even worse, but role player would actually be generous.
You played your role. Your role.
Yeah, I did.
Jordan Schultz, thank you so much for stopping by today, man.
My pleasure, man. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. As we get into NFL offseason, I was really excited that you were going to be here because I know you're plugged in. You've got your sources, and you're the one who's going to be up to date on any kind of rumors, what's legit, what's not legit, whatever you're hearing. Where do you think Shedeur and Cam Ward would have gone in last year's draft among
That's a good
the other
question.
quarterbacks?
Okay, so last year you had an absolute
great class.
Yeah, you had May, Daniels, Caleb, Penix, Nix. They would be somewhere.
JJ.
They'd be somewhere in the middle there. I would imagine. It's hard to know that. I think I'll say this though: if you were to put like May or Jaden in this class, I think they go one.
Yeah.
Because of what they've shown this year. The guy that I'm really excited about is Penix too. I'm really excited about Penix
on the end of the season. There,
what May did without May did without a lot of weapons and a really bad offensive line was remarkable.
Yeah, I feel like you can see it.
You can. Yeah. He's got it. He has got it. And Penix coming on late, like that's a playoff team. If Penix plays the second half of the year, that's a playoff team, let alone the whole year. But what Penix did against Washington, against Daniels, coming in, almost winning them that game, I'm super excited about him. And I think I've told this story I think once before, but the way that Atlanta drafted Penix is super cool. If you'll let me digress here,
please.
Penix was always viewed as like a really good prospect, but I don't think people realize how good he was until he really popped his final year at Washington. So he has the pro day, he has the combine. The Falcons then flew out to Seattle separately on Airblink, and it was Zach Robinson, the OC. It was the GM Fontenot. It was the head coach Raheem Morris, and they worked Penix out. The plan was to work him out at the indoor facility. They ended up working him out at Husky Stadium outside because the indoor facility was being used, and it was a really nasty, cold, gloomy, windy day. The other thing is the Falcons, I don't know if they did this on purpose, but their footballs were left with the luggage. So the footballs were not pleasant to throw.
Okay, yeah.
So they brought in, and the NFL football is different. It's a little bigger, and it's a little bit harder to throw. So they brought these footballs in, and I don't know if this was some kind of a test. I actually don't know, but I do know that Penix was completely unbothered by it. The weather, the footballs, the fact that they had to go outside.
Oh, wow.
Then Raheem Morris, the head coach, gets in and starts playing Mike linebacker, like dummy linebacker, because he wants to feel the ball, like he wants to experience it, because they could tell.
That's very cool of a head coach to do.
It is, and they could tell that Penix's ball was zipping. It was humming. And all of a sudden, that ball, and Raheem Morris is going, this guy's got a cannon. And then Zach Robinson really went to bat for him. And on the flight home, back to Atlanta after this awesome 45-minute workout, he was throwing to Jalen Polk among a couple other guys. That was really the impetus to them drafting Penix. And I think a lot of people were shocked.
It was like a shock
because of the Cousins deal.
Yeah.
$100 million fully guaranteed. It was a huge contract, but that's how much they believed in Penix. And they knew that if things went the way they hoped, they wouldn't have this opportunity to pick a franchise quarterback again. And that's exactly what he is.
No, it's very interesting insight. Because I still, remember the draft. I was at the draft, and it was like just a complete. I remember the gaffes from like the Falcons fans in the crowd.
Yeah, I got wind of it a couple of days prior that it was really possible, but you never really know. And it was a really high pick to spend on a guy that wasn't going to play because of Cousins. But they fell in love with Penix. I mean, his story in general is really interesting. He's from a very small town in Florida. He commits to Florida State. He commits to Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee, right.
Tennessee pulls his scholarship 2 weeks before signing day. Then he ends up going to Indiana, has a really good couple years, but tears his ACL, and then ends up tearing it again. He's all Big Ten. They end up having their highest ranking in 50-something years. And then he follows Kalen DeBoer to Washington. Mm-hmm. And his only offers after Indiana, I believe, were FAU and Washington. And so he didn't have a lot of interest. But then he ends up, obviously, going 25-3, second in the Heisman, wins the O'Brien Award. Maxwell, he has this incredible 2-year stretch. But I'm fascinated by guys like this because he wasn't a 5-star blue chipper.
Right.
He didn't have all the boatload of offers. In fact, his offer gets pulled. His only big offer gets pulled by Tennessee. And then he ends up, a lot of people said, oh, he might retire after the second ACL, but he ends up gutting it out, persevering, and now he's got this future in Atlanta with an abundance of talent, whether it's Pitts and Bijan and London and Mooney. I really like where the Falcons are going, and Penix is a big reason why.
Yeah, I think that even gives context into how he had that success at the end of the year, because it's not the easiest situation to be drafted to. I know we have the hindsight now with how Cousins performed, but like going to the draft, you're going to play behind this guy that just got a mega deal. Am I going to get any opportunity to start in the next 3 years? Like at the time, that was very much a thing. Absolutely. But he handled it like such a pro and just came in and boom, right away.
I was told that he really tried to soak in everything he could from Kirk, and that Kirk was very receptive to it. You always have you always remember about Brett Favre with Aaron Rodgers saying it's not my job to make him better. I think Kirk was very aware that this was going to be Penix's franchise. Now, obviously, it happened faster than he thought, but they obviously were able to create a relationship. And there is something to be said about drafting guys, especially a quarterback, that have persevered and they've seen one side and now they're on the other side of it and they know what it took to get there. So I'm fascinated by what happens in Atlanta, just because I really believe that offensively, they can be absolutely elite next year. I mean, the year that Bijan had alone.
Yeah, and even Drake London had a very underrated season.
Mooney had a really good year.
Yeah. Pitts Pitts put on at the end of the year too.
So yeah, I mean we'll have to monitor Atlanta, but I'm excited about them.
Yeah, well, look, I really appreciate all those insider insights.
Yeah, no problem.
Just those stories that, again, it gives you kind of a good look at someone like Penix, who I feel like there hasn't been too much about this year leading up, and you see why he had all that success. We are in New York, and I wanted to talk about the state of New York City football. The Bills are doing great, right?
Yeah. Well, they're the only New York State team.
Exactly. This is New Jersey football, really. Yeah. But starting with the Jets and their situation, basically, with uncertainty again with Aaron Rodgers, obviously uncertainty with a lot of other pieces of the team. Is it going to be some sort of fire sale, do you think, with the Jets? Where they kind of revamp? I know there's been some Garrett Wilson rumors that he might want out. How do you see the Jets going to next season between Aaron Rodgers, between the rest of the roster, between new coaching and new GM and everything? What are they going to try to do, you think, to really right the ship or turn things around? The
Jets need to understand that the number one thing now is GM and head coach alignment. They have not had that, right? They didn't necessarily have it with Joe and Robert Saleh. Joe was there over 6 years. Saleh was there about 3. But I never felt like they were especially aligned. And I cannot stress how important that is. And also just from a perception around the league of the Jets getting this hire right, getting it serious, making sure it's the type of not only person but type of football people they bring in that can tell Woody Johnson respectfully, don't meddle. Yeah. And Woody, I'll say this, Woody's not a perfect owner, but he does give guys time. And that's why I mentioned Joe getting 6 years, Saleh getting 3. 6 years for a GM not to go to the playoffs is literally unheard of.
Yeah, totally.
And Joe Douglas did some things well. He also did some things not well at all. And they had the longest playoffs route in North American sports, 2010.
Yeah.
And since Woody Johnson took over, which was in 2000, they had the 6th worst winning percentage in the NFL, the Jets do. They have to get this right. They know that. In terms of a fire sale, Garrett Wilson's way too good of a player, way too young of a player to go anywhere.
And it seems like they have a lot, if you're looking on paper, right, going into the season, I would say, forget about the Rodgers hoopla, whatever, just some of the position players, like Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, these are almost cornerstone level guys, all pro level guys.
And you mentioned Sauce, Wilson, Breece Hall, all up for extensions.
Yes.
Not to mention Jermaine Johnson, who's hurt. They have all these really good young players. They're not going to be able to pay DJ Reed, I don't believe, what he's going to command. They have all these really good young players that are now up for extensions, and you have to. You're not going to be able to do it all at once. So that's what the new GM. That's where he comes in. But also, it's not going to be any guys that he drafted. There's a lot of moving pieces here. I don't want to necessarily speculate on Aaron Rodgers, but it is absolutely possible that he's played his last game. There is also a scenario in which he comes back to the Jets next year, a roster that still I think is ready to win. So to answer your question, I don't think we're going to see a fire sale.
Yeah.
But it's going to be extremely dependent on who they bring in as GM and head coach, and that needs to be full alignment. I just can't stress it enough.
I'm a Giants fan, another New York football team that's just been in turmoil.
Yes.
I did want to sort of talk about, really lead off with the quarterback situation, because it basically is clean slate wide open right now.
Yeah.
Where, there's obviously the NFL draft, but it's kind of played out in a weird way where they're picking third. There's really two main guys, Cam Ward and Shedeur, who now that, with Deshaun Watson's injury, it feels like could easily go 1 and 2.
Yeah, good.
Have you heard what the Giants' preference might be for a quarterback this year? Because it could also go the route of maybe it's like a Russell Wilson or a Justin Fields a year, kind of kick the can down the line another time and wait for, a more quote-unquote better, at least that's what I've heard from draft analysts, that next year's quarterback class might be stronger than this year. So what have you heard with the Giants, what they might want to do at quarterback?
I think it surprised a lot of people, including myself, that the head coach, Daboll, and GM, Shane, were both retained. I thought there was a real possibility that they would at least move off of Bryant, potentially. They bring both back, and the owner, John Mara, has made it abundantly clear, Adam, that he does not have a lot of patience.
Yeah.
So that tells me that they need to get a quarterback in immediately and start winning. Now, I don't know if that is a Russell Wilson or a Darnold, or maybe it's a young Shedeur or Cam Ward. They picked 4th, is that right?
They picked 3rd.
They picked 3rd. So it's going to be really hard to get one of those top 2 guys. And this is really seen as a 2-quarterback class.
Right.
There are some other guys, certainly, I really like Jackson Dart. A lot of people really like him. But he's not going to go 3rd. So, at least not yet. So, listen, if you're the Giants, you have, and I say this with great respect, so many holes.
Yeah.
You're not a quarterback away. You're not a player away. There are certain teams that can realistically say, we're this guy away or this position away. The Giants are
a roster
pick
away.
And play away. Yeah, they are a roster away. They have so many needs. And so if I'm the Giants, I'm not reaching on a quarterback if I don't believe he's a bona fide guy. And Travis Hunter is seen as a truly generational prospect. I don't know if he goes 1, 2, or 3, but he is viewed as a true can't miss, once in a generation, not once in a decade, once in a generation type of player. Whoever gets Travis Hunter is going to be extremely happy because he's that special. And if I'm the Giants at 3, if he falls in your lap, to me that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I did have a Travis Hunter question for you. Do you think whoever drafts him will let him play both sides of the ball?
I've asked a lot of people this. He'll get an opportunity to do some of it, but I think and some teams view him more as a top-tier receiver, and some as more of a top-tier corner, and he won both awards, right?
So that's how good he is.
The guy won the Biletnikoff. It's insane.
Yeah.
I would imagine that whoever drafts him is going to give him an opportunity to do some of it, but the problem, the stats tell us that if you're playing both, now all of a sudden your risk of injury goes a lot higher, and he's such an investment. He's such a pivotal franchise guy. I don't think he'll play a lot of each. But there will certainly be a place for him to play both. And he's going to be dynamic as well on special teams. He'll be, he could be the best punt returner in the league right away.
Yeah, he could win the same type of awards in the NFL that he was winning in college.
Yeah, I've talked to GMs who have said he's one of the best athletes they've ever seen, period. And I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a video of him dunking.
Yes. He's a freak athlete.
He is an absolute freak, really good kid. And also to that point with Shedeur, I'm not a quarterback guru, but teams really view Shedeur as an incredibly accurate passer.
Yeah.
And accuracy always wins in the NFL. That's the number one trait. You can talk about arm strength and mobility. He has those, but he will drop it in a bucket. They call it the 20-yard handoff. He can do that. And I think also with Shedeur and Travis, because they come from Colorado with Prime and it's a show, which is awesome, fans will unfairly say, well, they're going to be a distraction. from what I've been told, you're not going to get any of that from either one of them. And I think Dion, to his credit, yes, it's a show, but there's also a lot of substance. They won a lot of games. They actually improved and won 9 games the second year. And it's all about accountability and holding yourself accountable. So those two guys, I think, are going to be great pros. And then Cam Ward, to your point, I've asked around on him. I don't know if he's as accurate as Shedeur, but he's a great athlete. He's a mover. He does a lot of things really well. And I think that's the reason why he's going to be a top 2 pick.
And just to touch on some more, I'd say hot topics now that we're in the offseason. One name, I'm going to go through a couple of the bigger names that are entering NFL free agency or might be on the trade block. One name that I think is being talked about a lot right now because of the sort of ebbs and flows of his value is Sam Darnold. I think just a very tricky to find a landing spot or a correct value for someone like him, given the regular season success, the playoff shortcoming. Have you heard anything about maybe teams that might be interested or might be a good fit for Darnold, if that is still Minnesota or somewhere else?
The longer, the more sustained the Vikings' playoff success was, the better chance Sam coming back.
Totally.
So the fact that they not only lose to the Rams, but he does not play well, and they get blown out is not good for his long-term prognosis with the Vikings. It doesn't mean he won't be back. One thing I've talked about that Minnesota could do is tag him, which is going to be right around $40 million, but that destroys your table. And I don't think the Vikings want to tag Darnold. You also have J.J. McCarthy there.
On his rookie deal.
On a rookie deal. And you just signed Daniel Jones, who they really like.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of possibilities in terms of what they could do next year. You could, in theory, go into camp with McCarthy and Jones and say best man wins. You could also bring back Darnold. I thought that Darnold would probably command somewhere along the lines of a Baker Mayfield deal, which was $100 million over 3. And so far, Baker's outplayed that. It's a pretty reasonable contract. But Darnold, a lot of teams really like Darnold. He's still very young.
Yeah.
It
seems like he's been in the league forever, yeah.
And so there's the reclamation project that he had this year with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota is remarkable. And nobody, especially myself, saw that coming. Let's let this digest and marinate the loss. But I said, I was very clear that if Minnesota flamed out, for example, in the wild card of the Rams, that I thought it made it a lot harder, especially if Darnold didn't play well, for him to come back. But there will be 3 or 4 teams very interested in him. But to that point, because he didn't have the type of game he wanted, you wonder what financially he'll garner.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I feel like there's been varying levels of success with sort of those. I guess you would say journeyman quarterback, like a Baker, like you mentioned, a Geno Smith. Like some of these things have worked out to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So one team might be interested in doing a deal like that.
A lot of teams believe great quarterback coaches and healthy franchises, Adam, believe that if they have the right coaching staff in place, that they can turn around a talented quarterback. And you saw that with Kevin O'Connell and Sam in Minnesota. We've seen that. Obviously, with Geno in Seattle, you mentioned Baker, the unbelievable job that Liam Cohen has done with him in Tampa. Even someone like Bryce Young, who seemed like completely written off, and then comes back in the same season and under Dave Canales does very well. There is absolutely no doubt Sam Darnold will have a very healthy market. Will it be in Minnesota? I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's going to be a lot harder now given what happened with the Rams.
I want to bring up 2 wide receiver names.
Yeah.
That are more, well, the first one is more of a free agent. The next one will be more of a trade target. But T. Higgins, is the marquee kind of playmaker free agent this offseason. I would imagine a lot of teams would be super interested. Yeah. Could be another franchise tag situation, maybe.
He could get tagged. There's so much about T. Higgins that is interesting. One is he is now being represented by the same agent as Jamar Chase.
Yes, I saw that, yeah.
Which is, it's very rare for an agent to have not only 2 receivers, but 2 elite wide receivers, both of whhom are up for new deals.
And great friends on the same team.
There's so many elements there. And the Bengals are not a franchise that has ever really paid guys.
Notoriously cheap.
Yes, and they broke significant precedent when they paid Joe Burrow what they paid him. And they actually, they do not want to do that again, but they're going to have to do that again to pay Jamar Chase, who's going to be, market right now, the first ever $40 million wide receiver. We saw Jefferson get 35. Jamar's going to get 40.
Yeah.
Jamar's going to get 40. He will break the all-time record. To your point about T. Higgins, he's going to be extremely coveted. And whether it's Cincinnati or someone else, that contract's going to be massive. We've already seen receivers routinely now get mid-20s.
Yeah.
T should get that and more. And, teams like Green Bay, New England, there are a variety of clubs that could be in the T. Higgins market. And I mentioned the Packers, knowing that they have not traditionally been a big free agency team, but they've also had a lot of injuries, and they just lost Christian Watson to a significant injury.
Yes.
So I would expect the market for T. Higgins to be massive, and there will be a lot of interest. But I mentioned New England as well, knowing that the Patriots have and continue to be huge fans of T's.
Yeah, it's interesting because T. Higgins, I think everyone knows, is a great receiver, but in a sense is in Jamar Chase's shadow, right? He's kind of like that elite number 2 of like a Devonta Smith, the Jalen Waddles, but he hasn't had that opportunity to really be the wide. So he could have that next level in him.
T. Higgins is a bona fide number 1, but he happens to play next to the Triple Crown winner.
Yeah.
And so, but also Joe really wants him back.
Of course he
and
does.
Jamar really wants him back. And you wonder, would Joe give back some of the money? Would they restructure his contract to make it work? There's a lot of moving parts there, but I can't overstate enough the fact that Cincinnati is just not an organization that likes to break precedent. I mean, they got to the 1-yard line with Jamar Chase before the season started, and he was actually willing to sit out multiple games. I don't think people realize that.
Yeah, it feels like forever ago, if I remember.
It does. But they were really close,
Yeah.
but they couldn't quite get there. And they were, the cash flow was good. I think it came down to I want to say the guarantees, but I don't know if people realize that Jamar was willing to sit out multiple games. They ended up pushing it down the road, and now it worked out really well in Jamar's favor because, like I said, he's going to be a $40 million guy.
Speaking of wide receivers at that $40 million level or in that tier, it's more of a recent speculation name, but I feel like Tyreek Hill, the way the season ended, I haven't seen anything really like concrete. It just kind of seems like shrouded in mystery. Have you heard anything about teams that could be interested or what's going on there in Miami?
There would be a lot of interest. He is 30,
Yeah.
and that is traditionally the age in which receivers start to decline. His game is so predicated on speed, and to my knowledge, he hasn't lost any of it. He's such a threat, and there's not anybody that I think defenses, like, you have to prepare so much for that speed and the threat of it, and it can really impact the way you game plan against Miami. It felt like there was a lot of smoke there at the end of the season, and he was very frustrated.
Yeah.
He did not have a very good year. Obviously, Tua missed a lot.
He said, "I'm done," or something.
He said, "I'm done." That was also in the heat of the moment, though,
Yeah.
and it felt like it was repaired to a degree. I haven't heard anything more on that.
Okay.
But if Tyreek Hill were to demand a trade and actually make himself available, there would be a massive market. He's still one of the elite guys in the league, and until that speed starts to decline, he will be. But I'm not ready to go there yet.
Yeah, I'm wondering who would make that big splash for Tyreek.
Yeah.
I actually have one more quarterback name. Again, probably not someone who he's definitely down a few pegs from what he used to be, but Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Just a lot of uncertainty as to like who would want him or what is he a starter in the NFL right now? Like for some teams, they've like, we want to bring in Russell Wilson for a year or two, maybe see how things go. What's the deal with Russell Wilson now?
This was trending toward Pittsburgh making a playoff run, Russell Wilson getting a similar contract to actually what Baker got, which was the 3 years, $100 million. I thought that if he continued to play well, that's where we were headed. Because remember, Mike Tomlin was the guy that really went to bat for Russell Wilson, and nobody has more power and more final say in that organization than Mike Tomlin. He was the reason Tomlin was the reason Russell went there. They met for multiple hours. They really connected as human beings. Tomlin has always said, you cannot lose your job if you're a starter, if you get injured. As soon as Russ was healthy, they were 4-2. They took Justin Fields out of the lineup. They put in Russell. But because the season finished so poorly, and specifically Russ did not play particularly well down the stretch, his future in Pittsburgh is certainly in jeopardy. There will be a market for him. He's not going to command the type of money that he would have. I still think Russell Wilson he said afterward, I have a lot of football in me. I still think he's a viable starting quarterback, but it really has to be the right fit.
Yeah.
There's not just an organization where you can plug him in and say, go win us 10 games. It has to be the right fit.
Yeah. No, it's I feel like there's a lot of teams that are kind of in that weird limbo of quarterback.
But a lot of teams would look at a Russell Wilson or a Sam Darnold for that matter and say, you're not going to cost us what this guy's going to cost us or that guy. We really believe in you in the next 3 years. Let's invest. Darnold for sure. Wilson will have to see. It might be more of a 1-year deal, but the bottom line is there will be interest for both of those guys. More for Darnold, but there will be interest in Russ as well.
One of the most coveted, maybe even infamous jobs in all of sports is the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
And I know you had a couple reports just recently.
Yeah.
I want to start with the Belichick thing first.
Sure.
So essentially, Bill Belichick, as we know, who just took the job at UNC, might have been interested in the Cowboys' head coaching job had he known it was going to be available, something like that.
Yeah, so I think Dallas mismanaged their situation in a variety of ways, but Belichick would have been a great option, I thought, not only because he understands the gravitas of the Cowboys, but because he has a relationship with Jerry and Stephen Jones. But it was never made clear to him or anybody else that Mike McCarthy wasn't going to be retained. And taking a step further, the Cowboys, during that week process of not extending Mike McCarthy, or they also denied the Bears' request to interview him.
Right.
A lot of folks around the league thought Dallas would get a deal done. It came down to really years and the commitment that the Cowboys were not willing to make. But because of that, they also missed their window to request someone like a Ben Johnson. Because the way that the league is set up, you cannot request guys past a certain date, and he's playing in the divisional round. And so now Dallas missed that window, along with an Aaron Glenn. So it was really mismanaged. Belichick, I thought, would have been one of the rare guys that could go into Dallas and have success. But we'll never know.
Yeah. Do you think, it feels like what you're alluding to is maybe there was some sort of indecisiveness within the Cowboys front office as the season was winding down. Like, maybe 1 week they were still like, all right, let's give McCarthy another chance. Like, maybe they just weren't really sure where they were going with it.
Yeah, I think, the Cowboys season got off to a horrible start.
Yes.
And then Dak goes down. They had a slew of injuries, but the injuries weren't the reason why they weren't having success. Their season was already a sinking ship. And so if you're Mike McCarthy and you're the Cowboys, I think realistically you knew this was not a playoff team because they were already by the time they got to Cooper Rush, they were already out of the race. And so I don't know. I'm not exactly sure yet what happened with Mike McCarthy, but it's ironic and very strange when you deny if you're the Cowboys and you deny the Bears' request to interview your coach. That tells us, forget as an insider, as an NFL fan,
totally
that we would like to retain Mike McCarthy. And they never actually got into real discussion about what needed to happen to get to an extension. Like, they never actually had legitimate contract extension talks. And so there's a super big disconnect between what should have happened and what did happen. And if you are the Dallas Cowboys or if you're a fan, you know this all too well. This is really what one of the things that's plagued this franchise for a long time.
Yeah, it seems like it has been a pattern. And, now here we are with a lot of it seems like indecisiveness, but also just mystery as to what's next for the coach, some of the players on the team like Dak and things like that. I also want to get to know about the job that you have with Fox.
Let's do it.
I think it's a job that just everyone always has so many questions about because it's sort of shrouded in mystery, right?
Yeah.
It's like a behind the scenes job essentially.
Yeah, it's very true.
It's always sources tell Jordan Schultz that X, Y, and Z.
Or sources tell Fox.
Exactly.
If it says sources tell Fox, that just means they're telling me. But I am employed by Fox, so I've been asked that. What does it mean sources tell Fox? But that means they're telling me.
And you tell everyone else at Fox.
Right. But because Fox is my employer. So you'll say sources tell Fox. That's just a way to, group it all together.
Yeah, and I'm sure sources come from a variety of different ways, but generally speaking, are these agents, are these people in front offices, people who maybe used to work in the league but are still plugged in, things like that? Like, who are sources for an insider?
So agents, day-to-day, agents have probably the most juice in terms of what gets out, what doesn't get out. Because agents represent the players, and it's in their best interest to put to have their player be viewed in the best light, and they're oftentimes going to leak to whichever media insider they had the best relationship with. So, and by and large, let's just say when an agent does a 4-year, $100 million deal, when an agent does a massive deal, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of the time, it's the agent that's telling the insider what the deal is. The team might be involved. It depends on what the team is. It depends on what team, who the GM is, what's the context of the situation. Right. There's so many factors, but a lot of times it is the agent running point on where it goes. Now, it can be the team, but sometimes teams will say to the agent, and they'll be collaborative about it, hey, we're gonna announce this. We're gonna have you leak this at 4:45. Maybe we'll leak it at 4:50. Or do you have someone you want to leak this to, and then we'll leak it after? Or they'll just say, we're going to do this, and you can do whatever you want. It depends on which team and which agent, what relationships they have together. And you can see how confusing this can get for me.
Of course.
Because let's say, hypothetically, you have a relationship with the agent and the team. But you might be getting potentially different messages of when they want to publish it.
Yeah.
So then you have to be really transparent to tell the GM, tell the agent, tell the whoever is the coach, to tell them collaboratively, this is where I'm also talking to this person. I don't like to hide the fact that I'm talking to person B and not person A, because I think if you present everything, as long as everyone's above board, you get the best collaborative approach.
No, it makes sense. I feel like maybe at some point an agent might want something to leak, like a rumor or something like that. Of course. Stir the pot a little bit, negotiating, having some chips.
Oh, of course. It becomes really valuable to understand your relationship with the agent, because you can often tell whether or not that agent is being truthful.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might get an agent that will say, I want to leak that teams are reaching out about my guy via trade. But you can't just go with that. So then you just go back to the team, and you don't need to say, I heard from this, but you can say, hey, I've heard some rumblings maybe, or is it possible that this team's reaching out? And then it might be absolutely not. It might be yes, but we need you to hold that right now. So there's a lot of factors. Generally, the rule is the more sources you have, the more information you're going to get. But with more sources comes more responsibility, because you never want to burn anybody just to get a story out for this person.
Sure.
Like, I don't want to burn, let's say, this team just because it helps this agent.
Yeah.
So,
do you have any top sources, you would say?
Definitely. You always have your top. You always have your top people. You always have your top 5, your top 10. It's almost like what's it called? Like when a high school commit is ready to commit to, like, let's say a guy's going to commit to Michigan, LSU, Ohio State, Texas, or Oklahoma. Those are like your top 5.
Got it.
But then at the end of the day, you really have like your number 1.
Yeah, sure.
You have your ace up your sleeve, and you always have your top people, for sure. And that's all about developing the relationship over time. And it's not an overnight success. It's impossible. You really have to put in the effort and time to grow the relationship.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask about the time that goes into this job. I mean,
it's this device right here. You see, I only have one with me today. My other one broke. So one's light. I was
going to say, I'd be shocked you only had one phone.
Yeah, I usually have 2, but it's gonna, we'll hopefully get it back by the end of the day. But no, it's a lot of time.
But I was gonna say, I feel like sometimes I'm waking up to a Jordan Schultz notification from whatever time. Do you have anyone helping you out with your actual getting it out to the masses?
Putting it out.
A scoop is coming. You have a scoop at 1 a.m. or something. Are you just on your phone? You're up.
Yeah. If it's something that's sizable to put out that late, you would be up. I will say that I do have someone that helps me with graphics.
Got it.
Because I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I've seen it on your page. You have some really nice looking graphics on your IG. Yeah.
I have no idea how to
Jordan's
do
in the lab in Photoshop. Just
I asked my buddy. I said, "Can you show me how to do this?" And he showed me, and I couldn't figure it out. So no, I don't have any ability to do graphics or Photoshop. But a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of the time, you'll have a really good understanding of who and what and when. And so with that information, for example, Deion Sanders, I had been working on that for a little bit of time, and I knew it was coming. I just didn't know exactly when, but I had it ready. And so when the time came, the graphic was done. I had everything prepped. So those are the great situations. There are situations that you can't predict, and you have to be ready on the fly. I guess that is part of the job. It's fun to have that, but you also like to be prepared, and it's better to be prepared.
No, of course.
But it's never it's not a perfect science.
You never know where you might be. Like, has there been a craziest situation where you got breaking news that you needed to break, like something weird that was happening that you're like, excuse me, I need to break this news real quick?
Yeah, I've had a few really weird ones. The one that I think probably stands out the most is when Hassan Reddick requested a trade from the Eagles last summer. I was actually in a helicopter on a tour.
Okay.
I was on a helicopter tour, and we were flying somewhere over New York, and I got the text to be on the lookout. And I was like, oh no, timing is so bad.
Trying to enjoy the helicopter tour?
Yeah, it's like a 30-minute helicopter ride. Right. I know that I can't get off. I know the service is not particularly good.
As noisy as possible.
It's super, super loud, dude. And so I get the heads up, and I was like, maybe this can be an hour or two. Maybe it's tonight.
Yeah.
And sure enough, less than a minute later, I got a call. And I knew exactly what it was. And I'm like, okay, this is good news because I'm going to get an exclusive or at least be first on this. But it's bad news because this call is going to drop any second. I can barely hear this person. I'm texting. It's so bad. And so my entire life flashes before my eyes because, from a job standpoint, because I'm thinking to myself, I'm with my wife and kids, I'm supposed to be, this is supposed to be.
You're trying to be present.
I'm trying to be present. And if you know me, there are times where I put the phone away. I will put the phone away.
That's healthy. You got to do it every night.
I think it is, and I've missed scoops, and I'm going to continue to miss scoops because of it. But I need a balance. I cannot do it all the time. I just can't. Not how I operate. And I find it to be very therapeutic and cathartic to have the family time. It's necessary.
Absolutely.
So I'm on this helicopter, and I'm not even really paying attention to the phone, but I see something big. So I look at it, be on the lookout, and then so I get on the call, and now I'm listening, and I'm doing this, and my wife knows it's important because I'm telling her, this is, And so I'm literally like this. I have the phone, and I'm crouched over, and this thing is...
You have the headphones on?
I didn't even have headphones. Okay. Oh, no, I had headphones. I had to take them off. And it's so loud. That blade
I've been in one once. It's insane
it's
how
terrible.
loud it is. Yeah.
It's loud even with the headphones on. So I'm thinking to myself, not only can I barely hear this person, but I'm not going to have the service.
Yeah.
We're 4,000 or 5,000 feet in the air. We're over who knows where. The service is traditionally really, really bad on anything, on an airplane, a helicopter, anything moving fast that's in the air is not going to have great service. So I'm thinking I have a minute tops. But this phone call and these text messages and this wording I had to put out took 15 to 20 minutes. It was it was a lot longer and much more of an arduous process than I actually anticipated. So by the time I get off the phone, I actually was able to put it out. I was shocked. Not only did the call not drop, but I was able to type simultaneously, and I was able to have the service, most importantly, to get the story out.
Wow.
It was a perfect storm. It was like a godsend. I couldn't believe it. And afterward, we finally got on the ground. I was sweating. I was like, this is nuts. This job is crazy. And my wife was like, did it work out? I was like, yeah, it worked out. Sorry about the interruption. But that's probably the best case scenario of what could have happened, but it's also the worst case of you're trying to enjoy a Sunday family afternoon.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, news drops.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy. Yeah.
I never want to be that guy, man. I want to live a normal life. But I was shocked that it worked out and that the call didn't drop and that we ended up getting it out first.
Man, you hear that? Your favorite sports insider, when you get that push notification, it's not always them laying on the couch just tweeting out news. They could be in a helicopter ride trying to be with their family.
Yeah. Most of the time, it's it's a normal situation.
Sure.
But you do have those where they're completely unpredictable, and that's probably why you want to have the phone with you at all times. But to that point what I said earlier. I've never been able to get to the point where I'm just on the phone all the time. I've had to learn how to navigate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a balance, like you said. I've seen you on plenty of shows over the years and everything. Like, I know you've been on McAfee. What's Pat like in person?
Pat's exactly how he is on camera as he's the same off camera. He's very authentic to himself.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed getting to know him and spending time with that show. It was actually as many times as I had been on, the first time I got to meet them in person, really spend time with them was at the Orlando owners meetings about a year ago.
Okay.
And I had said, hey, I'm here, maybe I pop on. And they said, yeah, come by. But I got to really hang with them for a little bit, which was really nice. And they're very authentic. Like,
it's hard to imagine Pat's faking. It's the TV Pat.
He's exactly the same off the air as he is on. And I think that says a lot about him. I've really enjoyed getting to go on that show. And like AJ's a straight guy. AJ is so chill. AJ's exactly the same. He's just low key, he's smoking he's such a good dude, and I've really enjoyed that show as a whole.
No, that's awesome to hear. Your show you have with Draymond Green.
Yes.
Why is Draymond Green talking about football?
With me, who cares?
Well, yeah, I wanted to touch on it. Like, I know Draymond was a D1 football player, right?
Yeah, he did. He did play a little bit at Michigan State.
I'm sure you guys have talked about it a little bit, but if he did focus in on football as opposed to his path he took with basketball, do you think Draymond Green could have been an NFL player?
Absolutely not. I have asked him this.
Does he think that?
He doesn't.
Okay.
He's very aware. He said because he tried out. Well, he basically did the Michigan State spring game.
Yeah.
And he said the moment he got punched in the mouth was basically when he was like, yeah, this is not for me. And Draymond is a massive human. I mean,
yeah,
massive.
I'm saying he could be like that big tight end in the NFL.
I've always said, and then I was like, what was it like to get hit? And he said it was not fun. It was not for me. Football is a true contact sport. And I've even, like, Draymond can talk himself out of anything. Like, anything. He'll get a crazy double tech, and I'll ask him on the show. I won't even prompt him. I'll just say, hey, I saw last night you got thrown out of the game. It was a ridiculous double tech. You should be ashamed of yourself. And he'll have the. You see, the thing about that is he'll always have this perfect counter where he truly believes, or at least it makes me believe, that maybe he has a point.
So he has reasoning every time.
He always has a reason. He always has a great reason. When it came to football, he was like, no, that's not for me. It's just, I couldn't have done it. And I think it's good that he recognized that, because the football players are like legit. NFL football players are modern day gladiators. Like, that is the closest thing to that. It is a whole nother level of toughness, of contact, of physicality. And physicality is a huge part of Draymond's game, but the NFL is a different level.
Look, Jordan, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. I loved it.
It was a blast.
I loved it.
Yeah, it was really awesome just to get to know, like,
thank you.
Ins and outs of being an insider. Sometimes you're on the helicopter breaking news. You just never know what's going to happen.
Hopefully that's a one-time deal. I don't wish that on anyone.
Anything you'd like to plug or for us to tune into?
I would just say thanks for having me, number one. Keep obviously check out my socials. I post everything on there. Hopefully TikTok's still around.
We'll see.
But mostly Twitter and Instagram. And then check out Why is Draymond Green Talking About Football with Jordan Schultz. It is a fascinating watch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to Scrap the Playbook. For more content like this, you can check it out on Whistle, but make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on this video. See y'all later.